everyone, my name is Dustin Ramsey with Mars Hill Technology, and this is our Tech Talk series. If you're new to our channel, this is a series that I like to do in our local county here in Madison County, North Carolina, at various library locations, but typically at the Mars Hill Library at 10 a.m. If you're in this area, we'd love to have you in our class. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the modern patch management. What we're going to be covering today is the mean time to exploit, the 24-hour rule, automating OS and IoT updates, and then finally we're going to be talking about business patch management if you own a business. So when patches drop, attackers start the clock. In this example, we've got when Windows releases a security patch, they're telling every hacker on Earth exactly where the vulnerability is, and the race begins the moment that patch is published. And what that's saying is, typically Microsoft will say, hey, we have this issue with our software. We're releasing this security patch. Make sure you patch it immediately because this is a known vulnerability. Well, the threat actor also will see that message and they'll say, oh, if Microsoft, we know that that's a vulnerability and we know that users are not going to patch their systems frequently. So if we do get access to a computer and we're looking to exploit something, this would be one of the ways we're going to be doing that. So the vulnerability is there after the fact. So the mean time to exploit, MTTE, this is a standard used in cybersecurity. It's tracking the mean time, the average of what time it takes to exploit these vulnerabilities. And in 2021, attackers took an average of 15 days after a patch to develop an exploit. And now today, the clock in 2024, is under 5 days. And that clock's getting faster. So each year, it's getting faster and faster for threat actors to exploit these vulnerabilities. Some critical vulnerabilities were weaponized within hours of disclosure. And then in this example, Log4 shell vulnerability in 2021 was actively exploited within 12 hours of public disclosure on millions of systems. So you don't want to kind of wait around when it comes to patch management. And a common phrase you'll say here or think about is, I'll update it later. So you'll be working on a project and you're like, I got to get this done before 5 o'clock, and you just keep pushing it off and pushing it off. Well, what happens is you'll take that little window, you'll bring it over here, a restart needs to be required, and you'll put it over here on the side of your screen or whatever, and you'll forget about it. Well, then Friday comes, and then you're like, well, I want to go have fun this weekend, and you never get a chance to do that patch. And then Monday comes, and it's been 5 or 6 days now on a critical patch vulnerability where your computer or workstation was not patched. And that's a security risk that your company or your home environment really doesn't need to be having. It's simple as scheduling something early in the morning or in the evening right before you leave to make sure that those get updated frequently. This is an image of the MTTE of different years. So in 2018, the average for that to get that vulnerability to be exploited was 22 days. As you see, it's getting all the way down to 2024 now, being less than 5 days to exploit vulnerabilities. So it's getting faster and faster as we go. And with advances with quantum computing and AI, these are going to be even worse as it gets going in our lifestyle. So patches are a critical thing or important thing to do. So the 24-hour rule. Typically, they like to rank these, and when I say they, CISA, C-I-S-A, and I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce their organization. It's a federal organization that detects vulnerabilities and gives it a ranking on a scale. I'm pretty sure it's like 1 or 0 to 12, and 12 being like the highest, or the higher the number is, the worse it is. But what you can look for are these words: critical, emergency. These are patches that need to be applied within 24 hours of the release. High severity patches, these need to be in 72 hours. And our typical patches, these are like your medium and low patches. These should be done on a regular update cycle, at least weekly or bi-weekly. And my organization, as a managed service provider for my clients, when I'm doing patch management, depends on our service level agreement, but we usually at least do weekly or 5 days, but some customers want bi-weekly when it's a more secure environment. They want to make sure those patches are getting done as quick as possible. And that's the low patches. That's not talking about the critical patches. These are getting checked multiple times during a day. But as long as you're trying to get these done within 24 hours, you're in a good, healthy environment. If you're working with very sensitive information, you probably have a dedicated IT environment that's all they do is they just start patching these and making sure these things are getting checked on a frequency. And this rule applies to everything, not just your not just your your software, but your operating system, your browsers, plugins, apps, and your IoT devices. We're going to be talking about the IoT devices here in a second. So here's some of the numbers we went over. You can get a chance right here and you can read through them a little bit, but 61% of these patchers of breaches exploited a known vulnerability within a patch available for 30 plus days. So a huge chunk of these, if you would have patched it, you would have avoided that entirely. This one is talking about less than 5 days now it's taken to exploit different vulnerabilities with these patches. And then, like I said, we're going to be talking about the IoT devices, but 57% of IoT devices, they never get updated. So you buy that device, you put it on your network, whether it be a home or business environment, and you never patch that device. They're just waiting on your network, waiting for someone to exploit it. And the cost for breaches in America here and worldwide, it can be very costly in an infrastructure. So a little bit of time can save you a lot of problems in the future. So some of the devices that we have on our home network or even in our business environment is like a home router. When's the last time you've logged into your home router and just checked that you're getting security patches, firmware updates for your router? Your router is your single most important component in your network. It's a choke point. It's your firewall. It relays all the information within your network and then with the World Wide Web. So, that's a very important part. This should be definitely checked on a frequency or automated. If you don't have time to log in there, make sure it's automated. If you bought or your ISP has provided you with a modem/router, make sure you contact your ISP and double check that your modem/router is getting critical security patches, firmware updates on a frequency, and it's automatically updated. You're going to be contacting the ISP, and they're going to be like, yeah, we make sure that's enabled on all of them. Well, the best thing you can do is just say, hey, for peace of mind, can you just double check to see when the latest firmware update was conducted? And you might be surprised, it might have been 2 years ago. So a simple 15-minute call to the ISP provider and just ask them to check that for you. If you got security cameras in your on your network, you need to make sure that you're going in there and checking firmware vulnerabilities and make sure that they're all patched up. You don't want a hacker to be able to access your camera feed and see you walking around in your house or something like that, or your family members. That's real creepy. So make sure that you're going in there and checking those critical firmware updates. There's a lot of news articles right now talking about major security camera companies where people were just able to access it without any credentials, which is crazy. So make sure that you're going in there and checking for those firmware vulnerabilities. There's smart printers. Everyone has a printer at their home, and it's typical on the network. When's the last time you checked to make sure that your printer has got automatic updates set up or it's been patched? And another thing is what if that item, and we're going to be talking about it over here a little bit, but what if that item is over 5 years old? Typically, for consumer environment, they're not patching those anymore. That device it's entered its end of service life, so they're not going to be supplying any more patches for it. They're not going to be supporting it in any regard. So that could be sitting on there vulnerable. And some people have 10, 12-year-old printers sitting on their network or even more. So either sell that printer, buy you a new printer that's getting patches frequently, or get it off the internet, plug it up with a USB, a USB cable to it, and that way at least it's off, just working for that one computer. We don't want it sitting on the network being able to be vulnerable. So the best thing to do is sell it. That's the safest route there, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you have to use it, try to either unplug it, use a USB when you're using it, something of that nature. And then, like I said, we're going to be talking about why the Internet of Things devices are so dangerous. Well, one, there's no automatic update by default. So, unlike the Windows, your operating system or software, typically they don't have an automatic update. You have to go into the app and make sure that it's receiving the security patches. And most people aren't even looking at it. We saw the metrics early. I think it was like 67%. 67% of people don't even go in there and update their firmware on their devices. And guess what? It's on your home network just as well. The best thing you can do for any of these Internet of Thing devices or like these smart TVs is if you have a normal just router, put them on your guest network. Do you trust your guest on your network? Not really. So I would put my Internet of Thing devices. I would put those also on your guest network. It's a quick way to do that. If you're like in a more professional environment and you have to have these devices on your network, you might want to put them in its own VLAN. That's a smart way to do it. You isolate them from your normal networks. So smart TVs, no one patches their smart TV. And another thing is no one checks the privacy on their TVs. The reason why TV is so cheap these days is because they're selling all your information for marketing. So make sure that if you have to have a smart TV connected to your internet, and a lot of people use them to use all those apps and everything on the TV, nothing wrong with it, but you got to understand that you got to make sure that that's patched. It's like a little computer on your network. Make sure it's patched. If it's not getting patches anymore, you got to sell it or take it off your internet. Make sure it is. So you can always take it off of have it where it's only in a LAN environment, only connected to, the devices that it needs to do. That way it's not connected to the internet. But the best approach is to make sure that you're patching that TV, that you know what's going on in that environment. So, and like we said again, if the items are over a certain year, they're end of service life. They're no longer getting service patches. So you need to start looking into that. So how do you do this? How do you automate your updates? Well, if you're in Windows, you go to your settings, update and securities, advanced, enable receive updates for other Microsoft products, and you set your active hours so restarts don't interrupt your day. If you're in the Mac system settings, you go into system settings, general, software update, enable automatic, keep my Mac up to date, and then you're going to do the same for install app updates. Sometimes you have to go to the App Store to make the app updates go if you're working on an older operating system, but you can usually choose that setting while you're in the system settings. For browsers, typically these are once you start up the browser, you're going to get a prompt to go ahead and update it, but if not, you'll just check in there. You go to menu, help, about, and check, and just see what kind of version it is and if there's any kind of updates to that browser. All these you can always Google and see how you can update it, and if something is no longer getting security updates, you probably want to delete it off your computer. So how do you enable your auto firmware or firmware updates on your router? Typically you can flip over your router or look on the bottom of the router and you'll see your username, which is usually admin, and then a password, and also you'll see an IP address. This allows you to get in your gateway into the actual router itself and to be able to configure any kind of information you need or any settings inside that router. If you're not used to this, you can contact an IT company. If you have your own router and you need a little help in that regard, use Google. If you have a router supplied by ISP, have them do it, like I said. But once you log in there, you go into your settings and then you'll just check to see if your settings have for updates is automatic, or if there's something sitting there for you to update. Last is you want to set and forget it. It's the right approach for operating systems and software or browser updates. The only exception is major version upgrades. Those you want to review manually. And the reason is not every program will automatically, once a new operating system's out or a major update, will go ahead and update all the programs for it. So typically what I like to do is I wait a few weeks, or a month or whatever it is, before I do a major change when it comes to updates and versions. There's a big one with Macintosh when they go, and you'll see the actual version, they'll say, oh, this is Mac, I'm moving from 11.8.2 and now we're going to 12. So it'll be 12.01. So that first number is a major update change when it comes to like an operating system or software. And the reason we say this is so everything's compatible and it continues to work in your environment. Don't want to rush things too much. So in a business environment, this is more catered to business, but you can get some information for this with the same in a home environment. If you had to manually patch across 10 plus devices, that's a full-time job. You would need an IT division, or you'd have to have someone committed to just making sure everything's up to date. Go to each one, log in, make sure it's patched. That's a full-time job. And sometimes if you patch things and you don't really know what you're doing, a patch can break the line of business software. So a Windows update, say for home users, can break your custom accounting or point of sales software. So testing matters. So you want to make sure that you test a major update before you do it. Let's say you have something that runs with 12.8 and you update that to 13, and now you can't even get connection to it, whether it be an API key or something of that nature. So you want to kind of test a major update, when you're doing things. So patches can break certain instances or connections you have. So there's no visibility in what's being patched and what isn't. So if you're trying to do each one individually, you might miss a patch, and that could be a vulnerability in your atmosphere or in your environment with your network. So one thing that we offer at Marshall Technology is we're an MSP, a managed service provider, and we provide RMM platforms, and that's a platform that allows us to manage, organizations and all their computers and infrastructure when it comes to patch management. It allows us to do that 24/7. We get notices and we rank things based on risk and vulnerability in your company, and we make sure that those are getting patched at a frequency that's standardized, which we use a service level agreement with each partner, and we make sure everything's patched and tested if it's a major patch before we release that back out onto computers. We also do it outside of business hours, so we'll do it at 4 o'clock in the morning when people aren't working. That's a huge inconvenience for people whenever you're logging in your computers and you got to update whatever because it didn't get done during the night. Or at the end of the day if it's a major thing. So we like to do that. We also provide monthly patch compliance reports. We usually email these to the companies so they can see what's going on and what we've mitigated. But for everyone, this is something that you can do tonight. So check to make sure your Windows or Mac doesn't have anything pending for install when it comes to patches. You can enable automatic updates on your OS browser or your Microsoft 365 Office products. You don't have to do this if you're logging into like a terminal, or not a terminal, but a IP address, and you're logging into it online. That's a SaaS platform, and they take care of that. But if you have Microsoft 365 installed on a local instance on your computer, you want to make sure that's getting updated just like normal. Log into your router, check for those firmware. Check your firmware on your IoT devices and make sure all those patches are being done automatically or all the way up to date. And the big one, remove any or update any software that hasn't been used in 6 months. What's the easiest way to manage your applications? Get rid of them. If you're not using something or it's been a few years before you've used it or last you've used it, you probably don't need it. If you paid for it, maybe you should continue to keep it patched. That way, if you do need it later, you've paid for it. But most of the time, you can delete those. They're free to download again or start your service up again later in the future. And sometimes they're just demos. Maybe you're trying out the product or you used it in the past and you no longer support it or use it anymore. Remove it, especially when you get new computers. You want to remove the items that you don't use on a daily basis. And a pro tip, when you're removing a great deal of applications from your computer, sometimes this can you can panic your kernel and it crashes. So some of these things are connected to your computer in ways you don't know about. So always make sure you do a system restore point or back up your drive and everything before you start just deleting a mass amount of applications. Do 1 or 2 at a time, 3, whatever, and then make a system restore point if you're using Windows, or Time Machine if you're using Mac. And that way, if you do have some issue, you can always go to your system restore point and you can know that, hey, I deleted this program and it's one of these 3 that caused that issue. So you can systematically delete programs until you find the issue and then try to figure out what's going on. If you just delete 12 different applications and then you uninstalled one of them, you don't know which one, and it just causes your computer to crash. 1, you've lost everything you've been working on recently. 2, you're going to have to try to figure out hopefully you have a backup system. You're going to have to try to do that. So it's always good to have these system restore points. That way you can go back into that state. So that's just a pro advice when you're doing deleting applications, because you never know what application's using it and everything like that. Always Google too. If you're not sure what the application is, always Google it. So 5 things to take home tonight. When a patch happens, attackers can start exploiting those. So you want to make sure you you go in there and get rid of these vulnerabilities off your systems as soon as possible. 61% of those breaches were exploits where they had a patch and it was made available. So you can be among the people that protect their system by going in there and patching it. So that's a great way to harden your systems. Make sure that you haven't forgot about your router and your IoT devices. Automate as much as you can when it comes to it. If you ever need any help with it, we do services for anyone in America here. We're happy to help you over the phone or remote for you, or provide you information. If you're here on YouTube, you can go in there and just comment. I'm happy to help you as much as I can in regard to that. And everything like that. And if you need MSP provided sources for you, we're happy to do that for you. So here's a little bit of a takeaway of those services for you. If you haven't had a chance to look at some of our other videos in our Tech Talk series, I highly suggest it. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We try to post these weekly when we do classes here in our libraries for our community. If you haven't seen the EDR and antivirus video, I would highly suggest that. That's a huge way you can protect your systems. Another thing is to always try to think about a backup. If you can't replace it, you probably should back it up and everything of that nature. If you need to get in touch with us, here's our information. And then our next series, we have a theme. It's a wild, navigating the digital wild. So we're going to be doing a series when it comes to privacy, avoiding phishing attempts, and we're not talking trout fishing or bass fishing. We're talking about cybersecurity and phishing. We're going to talk about what to look for and things of that nature. We're going to talk about VPNs. We're going to talk about browsers that can help you with your privacy and cookies. A lot more control when it comes to your privacy. So hope you can join that one. Like I said, just give us a subscribe here. If you have a question, please feel free to comment here. If there's anything I need to change, be happy to do that as well. Like to keep growing as a community. So thanks for joining and have a great week.